The clinking of crystal champagne flutes echoed through the vaulted ceilings of the Ethelgard Gallery, creating a chaotic symphony of wealth and pretense. The grand hall was heavy with the suffocating scent of exclusive perfumes and the desperate ambition of the city's self-proclaimed elite. They had gathered tonight for one singular reason: the highly anticipated autumn auction featuring the elusive, anonymous artist known only as Aurelius. I sat in the dimmest corner, far away from the blinding glare of the chandeliers. My attire was a simple, unbranded charcoal dress I had purchased for $40, completely devoid of the flashy logos the crowd wore like armor. In my lap rested a weathered leather sketchbook, and my pencil moved with quiet, rhythmic precision across the thick paper. I was simply observing the room, quietly documenting the hollow vanity of the attendees. "What on earth are you doing here?" The harsh whisper sliced through the elegant classical music. I did not need to look up to recognize the grating tone. It was Clara, my older sister, dripping in a heavy emerald necklace I knew for a fact she had leased for the evening. Beside her stood our mother, Eleanor, her face a rigid mask of designer foundation and pure disgust. Her sharp eyes darted around nervously, terrified that a wealthy socialite she was trying to impress might associate her with my understated presence. "I told you specifically not to come tonight," my mother hissed venomously, stepping closer to block me from the view of a nearby billionaire. "You look like a homeless vagrant who wandered in from the street. You are deliberately trying to humiliate our family in front of the Beaumonts." I calmly set my pencil down. My pulse remained a steady 60 beats per minute. "It is a public gallery opening, Mother. I am quietly sketching in a corner. I have spoken to no one." My voice was an emotionless void, entirely devoid of the dramatic volatility they expected. Clara scoffed loudly, her manicured hand shooting out with sudden aggression to snatch the leather sketchbook right off my lap. "Sketching? You call these pathetic scribbles art?" she sneered, holding up a meticulously detailed charcoal study of a wine glass. "You are 30 years old, and you still act like a penniless art student. Everyone here is preparing to bid hundreds of thousands of dollars on a genuine Aurelius masterpiece, and you are making a mockery of the event with your childish doodles." Before I could retrieve it, Clara's fingers pinched the top of the page. With a sharp tear that sounded unnaturally loud in our quiet corner, she ripped the drawing from the binding and let the crumpled paper fall onto the polished marble floor. "Security," my mother called out, her tone dripping with false distress as a man in a crisp black suit approached. It was Mr. Vance, the gallery's newly hired coordinator. "This person is harassing us and ruining the atmosphere. She clearly does not belong in an establishment of this caliber. Please escort her out through the service entrance before she disturbs the serious buyers." Vance looked at my plain dress, then at my mother's extravagant appearance. He did not know me by face, as I operated entirely through my legal proxy. "Of course, madam," he said politely, gesturing toward the back corridor. I did not argue. I smoothly bent down, picked up my torn drawing, and folded it into my pocket. As I stood up, my phone's screen briefly illuminated. I glanced at the secure notification from my private wealth management firm. Current liquid balance across primary portfolios: $142,850,300.25. The Ethelgard property deed transfer is fully finalized. I looked directly at Clara's smug smile and my mother's exaggerated sigh of relief. "I will leave," I stated coldly, my eyes locking onto theirs with the crushing weight of absolute certainty. "But I highly recommend you remember this exact moment when the auction officially begins." I turned and walked toward the heavy steel doors of the service exit, the sharp click-clack of my low heels echoing with absolute finality against the cold marble floor, leaving them to revel in their borrowed glory. The heavy steel doors of the service exit did not lead me out into the damp autumn night. Instead, I bypassed the loading docks and walked calmly toward the private executive elevator, a concealed shaft accessible only via biometric retinal scan. The scanner chirped a soft confirmation, and the steel doors slid open. I rode up to the glass-walled owner's suite suspended directly above the main auction floor. The thick, soundproof glass completely muted the chaotic chatter below, transforming the pretentious crowd into a silent spectacle. My $40 charcoal dress and low black heels felt entirely appropriate in the minimalist, shadowy elegance of the suite. I poured a single glass of chilled sparkling water, the sharp fizz echoing in the quiet room, and settled into the high-backed leather chair. My steady pulse remained unchanged as I watched the theater of vanity unfold below. Through the reinforced glass, I had a perfect panoramic view of Eleanor and Clara. They had aggressively maneuvered their way to the front row, positioning themselves strategically beside the billionaire Beaumont family. My mother's face, thick with designer foundation, was stretched into a painfully artificial smile. Clara kept compulsively adjusting her least emerald necklace, a desperate display of wealth she did not actually possess. The gallery's esteemed auctioneer, Mr. Arthur Sterling, finally stepped up to the mahogany podium. The sharp strike of his wooden gavel commanded instant silence. After a few minor lots were dismissed, the heavy velvet drapes on the main stage slowly retracted. An audible gasp rippled through the audience. Revealed under the dramatic spotlights was my latest creation, a massive, haunting blend of oil and charcoal titled The Hollow Gaze. Ladies and gentlemen, the pinnacle of our evening, Sterling's rich voice resonated through the high-fidelity speakers in my private suite. A newly authenticated, previously unseen masterpiece by the enigmatic Aurelius. Bidding shall commence at $500,000. Paddles immediately shot into the air like weapons in a war of egos. I watched with detached clinical amusement as my mother aggressively thrust her paddle, number 42, high above her head. She did not comprehend a single brushstroke of the emotional depth on that canvas. She merely craved the social currency it represented. 700,000, Sterling announced. Clara leaned in, aggressively whispering into Eleanor's ear, goading her to push further. $1 million to paddle 42. Sterling acknowledged my mother. Eleanor puffed out her chest, turning to flash a sickeningly triumphant smirk at Mrs. Beaumont, desperate for validation. The aggressive bidding continued until my mother, driven by blind arrogance, pushed the price to $1.5 million. She was gambling with money her fragile accounts could barely support. $1.5 million to paddle 42. Going once. Going twice, Sterling raised his gavel to finalize the deal. I reached out and pressed the discreet silver intercom button embedded in my desk, opening a direct, secure channel to Sterling's hidden earpiece. "Halt the auction immediately, Arthur," I instructed. My tone was an absolute void of emotion, as crisp and freezing as the ice in my glass. The heavy wooden gavel froze in midair. Sterling blinked rapidly, his polished professional facade cracking for a microsecond as he recognized the voice of his ultimate employer. "Ladies and gentlemen, my deepest apologies for this unprecedented interruption," Sterling announced, his voice projecting a sudden tension across the breathless hall. "I have just received a direct mandate from the artist. Aurelius is currently in the building, observing this auction." A frantic wave of whispers erupted across the marble floor. Below, Clara and Eleanor exchanged euphoric glances, visibly vibrating with excitement. They genuinely believed the mysterious genius was about to publicly commend them for their record-breaking bid. I took a slow, deliberate sip of my sparkling water. My fingers lightly brushed against the torn page of the leather sketchbook resting in my pocket. "Arthur," I spoke into the microphone, my eyes locked onto their beaming, arrogant faces. "Inform Paddle 42 that their bid is officially nullified, and execute Protocol 7. The suffocating silence in the Ethelgard gallery was suddenly shattered by the harsh, mechanical hum of the main stage monitors coming to life. Protocol 7 was the establishment's ultimate anti-fraud measure, an absolute and immediate blackout of unauthorized buyers. Below, the dramatic spotlight that had illuminated the hollow gaze abruptly snapped off, plunging my masterpiece into complete shadow. A solitary, blinding beam of white LED light slashed across the polished marble floor, locking directly onto Eleanor and Clara. My mother blinked rapidly, raising a trembling, manicured hand to shield her eyes, completely bewildered by the sudden, aggressive attention. Arthur Sterling cleared his throat, his professional composure flawless as his voice resonated through the high-fidelity speakers. "I am strictly instructed to inform Paddle 42 that their bid of $1.5 million is officially nullified. A real-time financial scan has confirmed your primary accounts entirely lack the necessary liquidity to honor this commitment. Furthermore, you have been permanently blacklisted by the owner of this property." A collective synchronized gasp rippled through the elite crowd. The billionaire Beaumont family, standing just inches away, immediately took a collective step back, treating my mother like a contagious disease of poverty. Eleanor's face, previously flushed with arrogant triumph, instantly drained of all color, the thick layer of her designer foundation visibly cracking over her pale skin. "This is an absolute outrage," Clara shrieked, her voice cracking as her hand clutched the heavy laced emerald necklace in a panicked, suffocating grip. "Do you have any idea who we are? We are VIP guests. Where is this so-called artist? Show yourself and explain this humiliating error at once before I call my lawyers." I did not answer her desperate demand with a shout. I answered with the steady, rhythmic click-clack of my low black heels descending the grand glass staircase that connected the owner's suite to the main floor. The pretentious crowd parted like the Red Sea, their eyes wide with confusion as the woman they had deemed a vagrant walked calmly toward the mahogany podium. Mr. Vance, the security coordinator who had escorted me toward the service exit just 20 minutes prior, visibly paled and instinctively bowed his head in sheer deference as I passed. I stepped gracefully up to the microphone, the cheap $40 charcoal fabric of my unbranded dress brushing against the polished wood of the stage. Without a single word, I withdrew my secure smartphone from my pocket and wirelessly connected it to the gallery's central display system. Instantly, the massive high-definition screens above the stage projected my primary wealth management dashboard, the green digits glowing relentlessly for the entire elite society to witness. $142,850,300.25 in verified liquid assets. Next to it, the newly finalized property deed for the Ethelgard Gallery, bearing my full legal name, materialized in crisp, undeniable resolution. Finally, I withdrew the crumpled, torn leather sketchbook page Clara had ripped from my lap. I placed it under the high-definition authentication projector on the podium. The massive screen magnified the meticulous charcoal sketch of the wine glass, but more importantly, it zoomed in on the bottom right corner. There, flawlessly integrated into the dark shading, was the intricate, cryptographic Aurelius cipher, the exact same security signature hidden in the corner of every masterpiece on display. "There is no error, Clara," I stated, my voice a freezing echo through the cavernous hall. It was the exact same emotionless void I had used in the darkest corner of the room. "The financial scan is brutally accurate. Your combined liquid assets total exactly $12,450. You attempted to defraud my auction to impress a room full of strangers." I shifted my piercing gaze to Eleanor, whose knees were now visibly trembling, threatening to buckle against the cold marble floor she no longer had the right to stand on. "You demanded I leave because my humble appearance humiliated you. You called my preliminary studies pathetic scribbles. Yet, you just attempted to spend phantom money to purchase a canvas painted by the very hands you so deeply despise. I am the sole owner of the Ethelgard Gallery, and I am Aurelius. You are currently trespassing on my property." The silence following my declaration was absolute, broken only by the shallow, panicked breathing of the two women standing under the unforgiving spotlight. Eleanor, finally comprehending the colossal magnitude of her miscalculation, stumbled forward. Her meticulously styled hair fell across her pale face, her hands reaching out in a pathetic display of maternal desperation. "My darling girl," she stammered, her voice a fragile, trembling whisper. We didn't know. You must understand, we only wanted what was best for you. If you had just told us about your success, we would have celebrated you. You are my daughter. You cannot humiliate your own flesh and blood like this." Clara, grasping the reality of my immense wealth, immediately shifted her strategy. Her eyes, wide with sudden, sickening greed, fixated on the glowing digital projection of my bank balance. "We can manage this together," she chimed in, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. "A family business. I could run the gallery's public relations. We are family, after all." I looked down at them from the mahogany podium, my pulse still beating at a calm, steady 60 beats per minute. "Do not insult my intelligence with your sudden affection," I replied, my voice slicing through their transparent lies like a scalpel. "You did not want what was best for me. You wanted a convenient scapegoat to elevate your own fragile egos. You loved the idea of a penniless daughter you could hide in the shadows, not a self-made billionaire who exposes your profound inadequacies." I shifted my gaze to the security coordinator. "Mr. Vance, please escort these trespassers to the service exit. Furthermore, contact the high-end boutique where Clara leased that emerald necklace. Inform them she has violated the strict terms of her rental agreement by attempting to use it as collateral for financial fraud. Her security deposit is officially forfeit. As the security team swiftly closed in, my mother collapsed to her knees on the cold marble floor, her manicured nails scratching uselessly against the polished stone, her designer foundation ruined by genuine tears. They were dragged away, their frantic, pathetic apologies echoing hollowly until the heavy steel doors slammed shut, sealing them out in the damp autumn night where they truly belonged. I turned back to the elite audience, smoothly adjusted the cheap fabric of my $40 charcoal dress, and offered a polite nod to Arthur Sterling. The auction for the hollow gaze will resume at $500,000. Please, gentlemen, continue. True wealth is not measured by the heavy emeralds draped around a trembling neck, nor by the designer logos worn as a desperate armor against profound insecurity. It is cultivated in the quiet, unseen hours of relentless dedication built upon an indestructible foundation of genuine substance rather than the fragile scaffolding of public perception. When society conditions us to worship the superficial facade, we completely forget that the most unshakable power always lies in authentic humility and the quiet mastery of one's craft. Kindness and decency are not transactional currencies to be spent only when a profitable return is guaranteed. They are the absolute bedrock of human dignity. Those who blindly measure a person's worth solely by the literal price tag attached to their garments will ultimately find themselves entirely bankrupt in the things that truly matter. In the end, the loudest boasts are merely desperate echoes in an empty room, while a true legacy is forged in absolute silence, outlasting the hollow applause of a fleeting crowd.